Good day. We are the members of the 22. We are here to dissent on the question why the educated people think uncritically. But first of all, we need to understand what critical thinking is. Critical thinking is a self-directed process by which we take deliberate steps in order to think at the highest quality or the highest level. The paradox that the question presents us with is that if critical thinking is so necessary for human development, why is it so rare even among the educated elites? The instinctive answer is that people simply haven't been taught to think critically. But that explanation is too easy and frankly not critical enough. Because when you look deeper through the lens of cognitive science and educational theory, we find out that the problem is not just institutional, but it's deeply human. Critical thinking is difficult not because people lack intelligence, but because it requires us to fight our own cognitive defaults, confront the blind spots education feels correct, and adopt an uncomfortable intellectual humility that neither our brains nor our institutions naturally reward. The paradox exists, not despite education, but partly because of how education has been designed. I'll allow my members to throw more light on this.
The importance of critical thinking is effective decision making and problem solving. It enables an individual to arrive at the best explanation of facts and also solve their problem effectively. It helps to overcome beliefs, bias by engaging system to reason through. According to Socrates 469 to 399 BC, the father of critical thinking, he introduced the Socrates method, asking questions like, how do you know and what are the implications? According to John Dewey, 1859 to 1952, the father of modern education reform, he called it reflective thinking and argued to students should also teach others how to think, but not just what to think. His book, How We Think, 1910, laid the framework of problem-based learning used in university today. According to Richard Paul and Linda Elder, modern framework builders, the foundation for critical thinking is developed by 8 elements: thought, models, purpose questions, information, interpretation, concepts, and point of view. This framework is now a global standard for teaching ethical critical thinking perspective.
I will continue from where my friend ended by giving another importance of critical thinking by Matthew Lipman. According to Matthew Lipman, critical thinking is important because it helps people to become independent thinkers. It enables individuals to analyze information carefully, evaluate evidence, make logical decisions, and solve problems effectively. Then also, Lipman argued that education should not only focus on memorizing facts, but should also teach students how to reason, question, and analyze information.
I'm here to talk reason why educated individuals think uncritically. According to Robert Ennis, the reason why educated individuals think uncritically is because of social influence. Social influence occurs when people allow the opinions, beliefs, or actions of others to shape their own thinking without carefully evaluating the evidence. Even educated individuals may accept ideas uncritically because they want to conform to the views of their peers or society, gain approval, or avoid criticism, respect authority without questioning them, and follow traditions or popular opinions instead of analyzing facts. For example, a university graduate believes a rumor simply because all their colleagues believe it without checking whether it is supported by evidence.
When an educated individual encounters complex situations, their cognitive laziness avoid them effort to seek alternative viewpoints. Instead of them to investigate the truth, they rather allow uncertainty to take over. They sometimes become passive consumers of information rather than problem solvers. In all, education alone does not protect us from our errors. Without conscious discipline over mental laziness, sometimes the brilliant mind even surrender to uncertainty. To think clearly, individual must actively choose to exercise the mind each and every blessed day. Thank you.
John Dewey, Robert Ellis, Matthew Lippmann all emphasize that true critical thinking requires reflection, questioning, and self-correction. Carol Dweck adds that a growth mindset encourages people to keep learning and reconsider their ideas. Therefore, education alone does not guarantee critical thinking. Humility and reflection are also essential. Educated individuals may think uncritically because of overconfidence. They believe that their knowledge or education makes them systematically correct. This can lead them to ignore opposing views, overlook evidence, and avoid questioning their own assumptions. Daniel Kahneman explains that people often estimate their understanding. Richard Paul and Linda Elder warned that intellectual ignorance prevents open-minded thinking.
One reason educated people often think uncritically is lack of practice, and that's the angle I'll be building on here. Building on everything the team has covered so far, it's worth stepping back to ask a important question. Why does this gap even exist among people who are clearly intelligent and well-educated? My focus is on one specific answer to that question: lack of practice, and what it actually means for how educated people end up reasoning or failing to reason critically. One reason educated people often think uncritically is lack of practice. Formal education tends to emphasize the acquisition of knowledge, facts, theories, formulas, dates, definitions, rather than the repeated deliberate exercise of reasoning itself. A person can move through years of schooling, accumulating degrees, while rarely being asked the question, weighing competing evidence, or scrutinize the logic behind the belief. Without consistent practice, critical thinking does not develop simply because someone is educated. It develops because someone is trained repeatedly to think that way. Matthew Lippmann's Thinking in Education argues that thinking skills, like any skill, atrophy or fail to develop without regular exercise. Much like a muscle that is never used. In short, educated people can think uncritically, not because they lack intelligence or information, but because the education gave them contents to know without giving them the consistent practice in how to think about content critically. This is my point on lack of practice, and I'll hand it back over from here.
Despite educated people have a vast amount of knowledge in the world, they may fail to think critically. Education does not guarantee automatic knowledge about every issue. When people lack sufficient information about an issue, they often resort to assumptions, personal experience, and widely accepted beliefs just to fill in the gaps. As a result of this, they accept claims at face value without considering alternative explanations. In his writing about critical thinking, David Robson argues that people think uncritically when they lack sufficient information. He explained that intelligence and education do not guarantee sound judgment about every issue. Educated people often have vast amounts of knowledge in their specialized field, but when they face issues out of their fields, they lack the necessary information to analyze them critically. Instead of seeking for additional evidence, they rely on assumptions and opinions of others, which leads them to make hasty and poor decisions. Also, with the influence of confirmation bias, educated people think uncritically. Educated people tend to favor information that confirms their pre-existing beliefs, which limits their ability to think critically.
Trust in authority. According to Daniel Kahneman, when information comes from authority, individuals may accept it without careful analysis. Under System 1, this can prevent the use of System 2, which is slower and more critical. As a result, educated people may trust authority instead of evaluating evidence. Therefore, authority can be a shortcut that discourages critical thinking. Similarly, Richard Paul and Elder emphasized that critical thinkers must question assumptions and examine evidence. They warn us against accepting claims simply because they come from respected authority. Individuals should evaluate the quality of reasoning behind every claim. Also, Robert defined critical thinking as reasonable and reflective thinking about what to believe or do. He argued that people should not accept claims solely because of authority present them. Instead, they should assess the supporting reasons and evidence. Trust in authority without evaluation weakens critical judgment.
Conclusion. Why education alone is not enough. Education and critical thinking are not the same. While education provides knowledge and expertise, critical thinking is the ability to question, analyze, and evaluate information before accepting it. The skill is essential in today's world where misinformation is common. Even highly educated people can think uncritically because of social pressure, cognitive laziness, overconfidence, lack of practice, specialization in one field, or unquestioning trust in authority. These factors can prevent people from examining evidence objectively and considering different perspectives. Ultimately, critical thinking is not defined by intelligence or academic qualification. It's a lifelong habit that requires curiosity, humility, open-mindedness, and a willingness to question both information and personal beliefs. As Socrates and John Dewey emphasized, the true purpose of education is not simply the ability to fill the mind with knowledge, but to teach people how to think. In an increasingly complex world, this ability is essential for making sound decisions, solving problems, and becoming informed and responsible members of society who are able to think critically, analyze words, and solve problems.